Cope Watch, where I will be dissecting and analyzing and counter-arguing every argument used to justify this, where those arguments are just cope, as we'll clearly see. Today's topic is going to be about this cope of, oh, Iran said death to America. Oh, and they're freaking heckin' terrorists, and oh. Yeah, okay. So they said death to America, so we go to war over mean tweets now. We can hear mean tweets and we get mad about it, so we go to war. And so what if they say death to America? Plenty of people every day say death to America. Do we see Iran conducting terrorist attacks? Do we see Iran crossing the fucking two oceans that insulate the United States against any invasion historically? No. So shut up, and then shut up because you don't even understand the concept of rational interest politics. Despite all these dorks being based fascists, I guess none of them read any political scientists' works. In particular, the famed John J. Mearsheimer. I literally read one book last year that he published in 2023 called How States Think, and it's aligned with this sort of realist perspective. I'm going to give my own ideas here, but this is all meant to elucidate the cope theory and why it's a cope, and that is the clear inconsistencies. So before we begin, like, subscribe, retweet. Marchese Max, you know what to do. You got to help me get up here. I've been grinding. On my tweets, on my streams and everything, and maybe I'm just coping, and maybe I just suck, but maybe it's working against me. Maybe the algorithm is being cringe and gay. I know that the talk of Iran suddenly dipped all of my engagement, and it's because they want to silence the oppositional voices, I suppose. So you got to help me out. You got to help me transcend the lower tier hell of the social media landscape. So before we begin, too, you may also head on over to marchesemethods.com for one-on-one coaching and or based therapy, where I work with you to navigate all of your confusing emotions, thoughts, behaviors, such that we can get your eyes on the prize and find your fulfillment and bring you to a place of joy, fulfillment, peace, confidence, and the like. Similarly, you can head on over to my DMs, or you can email me, marchesemethods@proton.me, for access to my Discord, where for $5 a month you get unlimited texting, asking me for help, questions, advice. We have my official hoodie on marchesemethods.com, and you can also tip me if you want to support me. You can tip me on X, the little icon in the upper right. I take Cash App and Bitcoin. And then finally, we have our Streamlabs Super Chat link over in the description for YouTube and Rumble. So go on over there. Let me make sure I have it open. LOL. Yep, I got that open. All right. That's all of our beginning shilling, our beginning Marchese Methods beg for money. So now let's get started. Now, as I said, the death to America one is just so rich because that's really being like a girl and saying we can invade them over mean tweets. And it sort of LARPs this pseudo realpolitik thing, where it's, oh, well, they pose a threat, they pose a danger. And it's like, that's not exactly how politics works. You think they pose a danger because you hear emotions. You hear them saying things emotionally. And because you're an insentient fucking single-celled organism, you presume that because you're a dork and you do things out of emotion, you can project that onto the behavior of a literal state controlled by a literal supreme leader of a theocracy. You think that because you're irrational, polities are irrational. And that's what you think if you're a total fucking dork, insentient, single-celled organism, totally subordinate to feelings. That's also what you think if you're a little scaredy cat, you're a little big fat scaredy cat baby, and you hear mean words and mean tweets, and you get all scared. You LARP that you're being courageous and a tough guy, and, oh, accepting the harsh reality of we have to not be compassionate. We have to destroy our enemies who freaking threaten us. And it's like, oh, holy shit, all the girls in the room are so fucking wet at what a protector you are. Which we all presume you are because you feel like one. You communicate that you feel strongly that you're protective. And we're all supposed to infer that means that you're going to take action because you, as a dork, presume that emotions have to precipitate every single possible action. So that's some of our psychology to that here. So, and this all stems from too this felt heuristic is bolstered by the history of the Middle East, but more accurately, the history of the American interpretation of the Middle East, which is Fox News conservatard slop that essentially reduces to brownoid Muslims equals terrorists. Now, I'm not a libtard type who says, you can't freaking assume that about them. I don't really give a shit whether or not we presume that about them or not. I don't really give a shit about being mean back, having mean tweets back, and being mean and judgmental. But when it comes to evaluating this in politics, you actually do have to be a little bit more of an adult and accurate. There's become this prolific problem of the not all X are like that meme, and it's, haha, you're doing not all X are like that, haha, as a way to say you're a dummy because you think that the existence of the minority disproves any pattern to the majority. Fair enough, but now it's become a really tired cope excuse for unironically thinking all X are like that. And it's particularly offensive and dishonest in this category because it's LARPing politics without having any actual investigative research or book reading or anything of the like about the Middle East or about Islam in and of itself. You know, the meme of me, hold on, let me look at my stream here and do my mouse. Chad, me looking up the histories and cultures of other races and so I could be racist more accurately. Well, it appears none of you are fucking doing that. And the most remarkable evidence for this is that there's actually a fucking huge difference in Sunni versus Shia Islam. And guess what? Iran primarily operates as the headquarters, of Shia Islam. Now, there's all sorts of differences that I won't litigate here, but in particular, it's a sort of less intense version of Islam. Mainly, they're not super strict on interpretation of the text and everything like that, and they're not extremely punitive about it. Moreover, the Ayatollah of Iran, so in 1979, there was the Islamic Revolution in Iran, which procured a theocracy. Now, when you have a theocracy, you essentially have a sort of religious law, a religious government. And the Ayatollah is the supreme leader of that religious government who has the religious authority to interpret texts and everything, as well as the political authority to advance the interests of Iran. Now, the Ayatollah, specifically Ayatollah Khamenei, declared nuclear proliferation or nuclear development a fatwa, which is essentially a no-no. He declared it that way multiple times to pacify the West, and it's very explicit in their doctrine. Now you might say, they might just be saying that. That's not how theocracy works. Theocracy is not so political like that. Theocracy works where people have this very strong felt attachment to their country, to their religion, such that they're not going to easily fuck around like that, like Protestant type dorks. Although that's not an attack on my Protestant friends. I have some Protestant friends. I have some new Protestant mutuals, this sort of thing, but you get the gist. Now you might say, oh yeah, well why did they pursue nuclear weaponry? First of all, they never pursued nuclear fucking weaponry. In fact, they only hedged on nuclear weaponry. And what that means is that they developed the ability to enrich uranium. You need enriched uranium to build a bomb or build one kind of bomb. And why do they do this? Because enriching uranium is the tough part of building a nuclear weapon. Everything else thereafter comes easy. It's the tough part because it's a long process and this sort of thing. So, to hedge on nuclear weaponry, they enriched uranium and they kept a stockpile of it. when you keep a stockpile, that means that should your country come under significant threat, particularly from a nuclear power, you can quickly build a bomb before they either use one on you or before they invade your country. Now, what is this sort of getting at? This is getting at that Iran's nuclear hedging was a bit of a defensive strategy. And why was it a defensive strategy? If you're not a fucking idiot, you can see what happened all throughout their entire neighborhood. We toppled Iraq and the Saddam Hussein regime. We toppled Libya, and Libya gave up nukes. How about that one? Libya, to pacify the United States with this nuclear weaponry thing, said, fair enough, we'll give up our nuclear weaponry. And what do? We bombed them anyway and decapitated their regime and took out Muammar Gaddafi. So not exactly a strong selling point for Iran to totally abandon their ability to nuclear hedge and ability to build a bomb. Now, they also, you might think, well, why wouldn't they build a bomb then? Well, they wouldn't build a bomb because that would actually provoke the United States. Presumably, the United States has surveillance on them, would find out in some fashion that would provoke the United States, that would provoke Israel. So they kept it in this middle ground that everyone sort of had to be uncomfortable with. Now, you might say, well, they're still fanatics. They're still hiding a nuke or something like that. And then we arrive at the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action. This was the Obama-era Iran nuclear deal that he got shit from Israel for, which was this essential compromise, only allowed to enrich to a certain percent, only allowed to keep a certain level of stockpile, and subject to inspections from the IAEA, this sort of International Atomic Energy, something like that, Association, something like that. Not a memory cell, not a rote memory cell here. So if you want to clip that, go ahead. Clip that, me not knowing, remembering exactly what the IAEA stands for. So it was subject to regulation, and lo and behold, Iran passed the sort of inspections every time. And Iran was, for the most part, neutralized as a threat in this way. But guess who comes after Obama and rips up the JCPOA and demands that Iran entirely abandon their nuclear capability? Your based Trump, your based epic fascist strategist Trump. Now, we all know why he did that. That was to pacify and to be Israel's bitch. And he clarified that even more in his assassination of Iran's top general, Qasem Soleimani. Now, this is pretty provocative. Did Iran do a terrorist attack on the United States in response? Did Iran do some crazy thing in response to the United States? No. So this idea that Iran is this belligerent, irrational actor ignores the reality of politics. That is, that for the most part, every polity is most of the time rational. It ignores Iran's pursuit of defensive sovereignty and defensive strategy. And it cope-larps that Iran's just a big fat meanie who hates white people and hates the West. And isn't it sort of an oxymoron? If them saying death to America is what the absolute standard because it implies that somewhere, some point, they hold such a hostile resentment, they're going to attack the United States because, oh, they hate our way of life. If they hated our way of life, why is it not death to the West? Because arguably Europe is more offensive to them than the United States. It's specifically death to America. Did we ever stop to think why they might, some other reasons why they might fucking say that? Gee, I don't know. Maybe it's toppling every power in the region and being Israel's bitch. This is actually stated as one of the reasons why Osama bin Laden sanctioned the attacks on 9/11. Not the major reason, but one of the stated reasons. Bet you didn't know that, based fascists. A really important part there about strategy, about death to America, the region. Total aura loss here. I still have to address Sunni Islam. But it's clear Iran doesn't actually pose a threat. And this way, and that's what I was going to say. Let's suppose Iran was a big fat meanie and wanted to invade the United States. Doesn't the whole world know that the United States is so freaking strong and epic and has the most based, epic freaking military ever? Such that they know that that would surely end in the destruction of their state and a becoming a vassal of the United States. Surely everyone knows that, right? Because we're all such tough based fascists. It's the oxymoron I mentioned yesterday. Iran is such a big fat meanie threat, but also they're so militarily insignificant that the United States is totally gonna freaking heckin' beat them in 4 hours. 4 days. 4 weeks. 8 weeks. Well, we need to do a ground invasion. Well, really, we're gonna be there until September. So grow up, faggot. And stop coping with your obsequious over-identification with military strength and this pseudo-tough guy masculinity of real politics and, oh, we're gonna freaking heckin' kill them because they're freaking mean. That's actually kind of being a giant fucking vagina. Invading over mean tweets. You're also, what is that supposed to be? Masculine upholding boundaries, upholding disrespect? Yeah, so what happened to not being so sensitive, not being so triggered? Moreover, not a single fucking one of you faggots does that in your daily life. Somebody says something rude to you every single fucking day and condescending and passive aggressive, especially women, and you all pussy out and you say, well, I'm gonna get arrested like a neurotic freak woman. This kind of neuroticism about, oh, they said mean tweets, that's the exact neuroticism that started World War II. Everyone was a spurg, neurotic, fucking pathological woman or something about Hitler. Literally Hitler. Literally Hitler said and did some mean things and gave a mean speech. Well, the based fascists argue that, that was Cope, and you libtards don't understand, and you're portraying him as the cartoonishly evil big fat boogeyman. What the fuck are you doing now? You're portraying Iran as the cartoonishly evil big fat boogeyman, which is a symptom of not being such a smarty pants on politics after all. Iran is rational, and it is a theocracy, which means that it will hold out. It will hold out, and it will operate pursuant to its sovereignty and everything. Do I give a shit about them, and do I give a shit about protecting their sovereignty? No. But if we're talking about realistic strategic interests, death to America mean tweets aren't an excuse to invade them, because that does nothing for our fucking interests. Canada's been saying mean tweets. Trump says mean tweets. By that logic, Canada should invade, and that's gay to say because that's not particularly an own. But why doesn't Canada invade? Well, because they know they would lose. Oh, gee, if Canada would lose to the United States, I wonder who else would fucking lose, and therefore isn't going to invade or attack the United States. Oh, well, they're irrational. Oh, they're irrational and belligerent. You mean the country that has hedged on nuclear weaponry, as proven by our intelligence and the IAEA, that didn't retaliate super belligerently to Qasem Soleimani or in the war last year. They telegraphed the attacks before they happened and sort of like half-ass bombed part of old facilities. And how about this one? Iran pursuant to nukes between the United States and Iran. Which one has actually used nuclear weaponry before? Fucking faggot retards. The United States. Now, fair enough, you could say, well, at the time, people didn't really understand the magnitude of destruction and this sort of thing. But nevertheless, the United States still fucking did it. So if there's any evidence for one country to be particularly eager or belligerent or using nuclear weaponry, it's the United fucking States. Now, some of you might still not be convinced because you still think that, oh, they're freaking terrorists and everything. Now, I said earlier there's a difference between Sunni and Shia Islam. Iran is the headquarters, essentially, of Shia Islam. And Sunni Islam is actually the more so belligerent one, the more radical one. In particular, a subsection of it known as Wahhabism, which comes from one of their religious interpreters in the 18th century that goes really hard. This is the birthplace of these terroristic organizations. Now, before the algorithm copes or everything, because when I researched this, holy cope, it was like, well, Sunni doesn't, give birth to terrorism to be like woke about authorizing, about not being judgmental of Islam or something. So let's put it this way. Every terrorist organization, for the most part, falls under and identifies as Sunni Wahhabist. The Taliban, Al-Qaeda, ISIS, although we also know there's a particular party that is interested in ISIS, and it's a little suspicious how ISIS came about. But for the most part, as it looks on paper, ISIS is a Wahhabist, a Sunni organization. So now the grand epic own here is, well, we're not willing to deal with Iran because they say mean tweets and they're extremist or something, but we are willing to deal with the country that's the central hub of Sunni Islam that has mean tweets about the United States. And that country is Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia is the headquarters of Sunni Islam. It has a total history there. That's where it all comes from. And Sunni Islam proliferates everywhere in the Middle East, basically, essentially, except for Iran. And yet we're so nice to Saudi Arabia, and we're playing games with them, and we're hanging out and making deals. And isn't it remarkable that they're so belligerent, but they're still behaving rationally? Rationally in deal making with the United States, in playing deals with China and Russia, not particularly sanctioning terrorist attacks against the United States. So supposing even Iran is a belligerent freak show that simultaneously says death to America, but also very specifically followed the nuclear mandates and did not, and specified in their sort of felt passionate religious doctrine to not pursue nuclear weaponry. So they're too extreme for us to deal with, and we have to invade them and we have to blow them up, but Saudi Arabia isn't. Supposing Iran was even belligerent, Saudi Arabia would be significantly more belligerent and terroristic. But Iran is categorically not even in this way. And so then it becomes Saudi Arabia is the actual hub of terrorism in a way. But we're so willing to deal with them. And you want to know why we're willing to deal with them? Because they pacified us by letting us pay them off and normalizing ties with Israel or playing nice with Israel. So that discrepancy tells you that there is an ulterior motive here, and the ulterior motive is antagonizing Iran pursuant to Israel's Oded Yinon plan and the Clean Break Memo. Because we are a bitch slave of Israel, because there is a Jewish elite class in the United States that wields tremendous wealth, power, influence, and operates in this seemingly disconnected, clandestine way, although not so clandestine anymore, and deeply embeds itself in our intelligence agencies and in our politicians. They do so that they can weaponize the United States and its politicians and its whatever it's got to facilitate the interests of not just Israel, but the broader world Jewish diaspora overall, which for right-wing Jews becomes Zionism and Israeli hegemony over the region, such that Israel can ascend to parity power with the United States because it has a bomb and it controls one of the most consequential regions in the world, the IMEC corridor, the Suez Canal, the Persian Gulf. Or there's the left-wing Jewry, the left-wing Jewish operation, which is to encourage, liberalism and collectivism and this sort of thing such that they blend in fairly easily, particularly in Eurocentric countries, because they look European. Most of them do. At least the Ashkenazi and the Khazarian ones and whatever. So this one isn't particularly long here. I went over the facts and the details and this sort of thing in the rationalization. So I'll get into a little bit more of the psychology. It's not a super sophisticated analysis here. It's just a combination of media diet over the past 20 years, being an ignoramus, feeling like a tough guy as we proclaim these quips about Islam and how heckin' frickin' jerkish they are and what a tough guy we feel like, playing LARPing protectorate of all the heckin' frickin' women and children. And there's also something tacitly buried in there, particularly in this rightoid dorkosphere, and that is this self-victimization that's getting out of control. White dorkoids have rightfully contended with the United States' subjugation of whites and this sort of thing, and instead of ascending the ranks and becoming intrinsically and transcendentally powerful, they flip the script of the victim hierarchy. They figure they can gain power by placing themselves at the top of the victim hierarchy. And one of the ways they do this is to do this meme of, oh, they're freaking meanie jerks and they hate our way of life. What is our way of life? A Christian white way of life. And so they victimize themselves. And in the broad rightoid dorkosphere, that's just a correct thing no matter what to specify or feeling to communicate. And so they feel really good communicating that because that's supposed to be brave, that's supposed to be edgy, that's supposed to be the realistic politics of white people are under persecution. But it is a cope self-victimization. It further bolsters this victimization where it's just like the brown welfare complaints and the brown reparation complaints, but for white people now. Black people say they want like reparations and this sort of thing. White people go, no, me, give me. That's essentially what that part reduces to. And so if you argue against it or if you challenge them, they spurg the fuck out because it's their little precious wounded self. This self-victimization is like a way to hedge, a way to cope, a way to LARP brave, and a way to LARP power or something like that. And they LARP this power and this bravery amidst feelings of inadequacy, of weakness, which stem from indulging themselves in their id and rejecting their superego. And it becomes a rationalization that suppresses and staves off the guilt of the superego. So this is the situation, the ignoramus situation, and you don't need to know much more about Islam to understand these differences. Just know that the discrepancy is we're saying Iran is too terroristic and belligerent to deal with, but also saying Saudi Arabia, but also dealing with Saudi Arabia, and just dealing with terroristic big fat meanie regimes all the time. Do we invade North Korea because they're big fat meanies? Do we invade China and Russia because they're big fat meanies? Well, no, because they have nukes, and I thought our whole shtick was we're worried that Iran has nukes. Well, no, we don't invade them because, we could lose or something like that. There's sort of like that buried in there in that reasoning, and then it's, oh, well, what happened to the United States military is such a tough guy organization that could never possibly lose or face any challenge on the world stage. So, beyond juvenile, and importantly, we know that the apparatus of conservatards, this is just talking points they know aren't true and are just shilling for. But you, being a conserva-fucking-tard dork, are this caricature that's destructive. That's a problem. This caricature that doesn't fucking understand any of this and just plays along with the feelsy-goodsies and over-identifies with whatever the Republican consensus is to play tough guy because anything else is categorically pussified libtards. And you can't risk so much as appearing to be a pussified libtard. So you got to play these cope games. You need to grow up. You need to stop leveraging politics as a cope excuse for your inadequacy, a cope excuse for your indolence, and a cope excuse for your indulgence. You want to be such a fucking tough guy? It's not that hard. Be a fucking tough guy. Go to the gym for real. Don't just fucking pig out and oink away on fucking raw milk. Actually study politics. Challenge your peanut little brain. Subject yourself to discomfort. Abdicate pleasures, impulses, fucking anything that's emotionally masturbatory in addition to physically masturbatory. And get the fuck over your peanut little lizard brain telling you that you're going to die otherwise. You want sovereignty. You hate yourself right now. You know that you hate yourself and you have low self-esteem and you're miserable. So what fucking choice do you have? You have one choice. Sacrifice comfort for joy, for fulfillment, for peace, for confidence. Whatever you're fucking doing right now isn't working, and Iran cope isn't working either. And either pretending not to understand this or being a cope theorist ignoramus is making you fucking miserable. So I think that's that there. So not a long one here, but that's okay here. I like my setup. The lights are actually coming through well. I sort of played around with it and I figured it out. So that is our stream, part 2 of the Iran Cope Watch. If you would like one-on-one coaching and or base therapy, head on over to marchesemethods.com, where we work through and navigate your confusing thoughts, feelings, and behaviors to better arrive you at a place of joy, fulfillment, peace, confidence, and get your eyes on the prize. Find your fulfillment. You can head on over to my DMs or my email, marchesemethods@proton.me, for a link to my Discord for $5 a month. My brain is melting here. It's almost my bedtime. Old head ass. I'm 30 years old. Can you believe that? I'm 30 years old. It's over, guys. And I didn't take my brain pills. I do take the brain pills like you guys, the nootropics or whatever sometimes, and the caffeine, but I do that in the morning. So, and I also forgot to take the brain pills today because I finished my labor-intensive writings here that I'll publish sometime tomorrow. So, merchandise on my website. You can send a super chat on Streamlabs. It's a silly link to utter, so it will be in the description. And you could also tip me on my X profile. I take Cash App and or Bitcoin. So that's part 2. Stay tuned for part 3. I don't think I'll manage to do it tomorrow, but perhaps on Saturday. Part 3. Let's see. What should I do, guys? Yo, chat. Yo, my non-existent chat. My chat that's not there, because I just have a few loyal soldiers. 07 to my few loyal soldiers that watch or continue watching. My IRL friends, my dad, my mom and dad. So appreciate the loyal members that aren't in the live chat or anything, but are still here nevertheless. This is what you got to do. This is the grind. This is what you got to do. It's so remarkable how many people think that, like, can't just take satisfaction in the process and play their internet posturing games. Like, I'll do this when there's 0 viewers. I don't care. I just love getting my thoughts out here. I love it as an advertisement for the help I can do for people. And so, but let me stop and so that nobody clips me and makes like I'm coping. So there's the don't divide the base thing. Some of the major topics to look forward to is the strategy of non-nuclear proliferation, the strategy of regional stability, that perhaps I should have gotten. Maybe that was something I thought of here. Well, actually, yeah, I'll get into that. I'll say Now let's talk about the importance of a theocracy. So your cope about how it's such a big fat meanie jerk population that's irrational. You know what actually might amount to something that looks like irrationalism? That is that they are a theocracy, which means they are going to defend themselves fucking hard. You killed their pope, essentially. Do you think that's going to make them cower and surrender? Or do you think that's going to embolden them? What's more, this sort of relates to the cope of, oh, they're big fat meanie Muslims, but simultaneously they want to be liberated and live under a democracy. So which is it? Are they irrational big fat meanie jerks? Jerk Muslims, or are they that are totally unable to assimilate with Western society and culture, or are they begging for Western society and culture? And this cope is like remarkable too, because I thought we were all based racists to understand that race and culture are inseparable, and therefore if your race is not sort of in a way sort of the neighbor on the spectrum to the culture, you're never going to assimilate, you're never going to get it, you're never going to figure out. So, you know, by that logic, there's no such thing as anybody in Iran who wants a fucking democracy. I thought we were all based fascists too, and we don't give a fuck about homoerotic democracy spreading and freaking heckin' whatever, but also we're like, but the women there are so oppressed. So which is it? And also, you know, let's examine again Sunni and Shia Islam. I guarantee that it's nowhere near to the degree that you idiots are imagining, because you're imagining Sunni Islam. So, and this is the, you know, we mentioned their defensive, we mentioned their rationalism. This means that they're actually a stabilizing force in the region. What is the actual interest for the United States? And this gets into the real politics, so perhaps I'll save it for the most part next time. But that Iran is behaving rationally implies that Iran operates as a stabilizing agent, because they're not being big fat meanies across the region. The big fat meanie across the region is Israel. Now, what is the U.S. interest precisely in the region? We want non-nuclear proliferation, but we also want stability in the region, because if Israel or Iran emerges as the regional hegemon, then they can leverage their power over the IMEC corridor, the Suez Canal, the Strait of Hormuz, the Persian Gulf, in deal-making with the rest of the world. They could close it off to other countries. They can close it when they're not getting their way, this sort of thing. And so we actually don't want a regional hegemon, and we don't really want nuclear proliferation. Now, of course, we're so concerned about that, except for when Israel steals our nuclear secrets in the Apollo affair. And we were concerned about that up until 1963, and that was JFK telling them no, telling them to stop fucking giving him the ring around about nuclear inspections, and mysteriously, he conveniently gets assassinated. So the regional interest there is actually stability, and Iran nuclear hedging functions to check Israel. Functions to stop Israel from becoming the regional hegemon, and Israel functions to stop Iran from becoming the regional hegemon. You know, when people say they're destabilizing the region, no, they're destabilizing the region for they're destabilizing Israel's agenda. What's exactly so destabilizing about the region again? Because, last time I checked, who's the one who goes in there and wages war and topples regimes and then does gay democracy spreading just for it to not work for 20 years? Who's the destabilizing agent? Who are the two agents that, with their based epic military and democracy spreading, somehow the region is more fractured than ever and is like a mosaic of statelets, which was oddly specified as one of the goals in the Oded Yinon plan and the Clean Break memo. So that's the little bit extra there that took us a little bit more time. That's the regional stability there. Let me see if there's actually some other major point that I can address here. I guess I already went over the non-nuclear proliferation element. Yeah, I mean, like according to what was Iran going to attack the United States? Do you have evidence or a rational inference for that? As if acquiring a nuke means you're going to use it. If anything, using a nuke has nuclear proliferation in a way has stabilized the world. The United States and Russia precisely teetered on the edge of war but never went to war because of fucking nuclear weaponry, mutually assured destruction. Now, granted, it does bring Iran to parity power with the United States, that they become a thorn in the United States' side, a power that we have to pacify, we have to negotiate with, or we're more forced to negotiate and be more accommodating. But nevertheless, it's not like that actually amounts to, if we reject some kind of deal or something, they're just going to nuke the whole world. You know who would nuke the whole world when they don't get their way? Fucking Israel. They have the Samson option. How about that one? Conservatards. Did we forget about that part? You're all a part of the same based, fascist, racist internet that I'm on. Yet somehow you all forget about the Samson option. You also forget about, I think Nixon was trying to stay out of one of their latter conflicts with, I think it was Egypt. And Egypt was totally fucking BTFOing them, and Nixon tried staying out, but then Israel said, oh, we're going to have to take extraordinary measures to him on the phone, and he knew what that fucking meant. He meant that was the Samson option. So what did it do? It forced the United States to come in on behalf of Israel. Just like how the Israel said, well, we're just going to attack anyway, and it's going to force Iran to attack you. Even though Iran didn't fucking do that last time. So isn't that sort of a pattern here? Who's really the fucking belligerent, irrational one in the region? So I have a lot of good points here, but perhaps I'll leave it for the write-up here, because then I'm just going to be saying random points here, seemingly random points or unrelated points that don't really amount to much of an impressive monologue. Or maybe I'll just say it because I can't help myself. On that attacking part, it's just so funny. It's like, well, we weren't going to wait until we were getting attacked. Okay, but if you attack, you're going to get attacked back. And Iran literally categorically did not attack the United States last time Israel attacked them, because they knew it would provoke the United States to a degree that they don't want. They're prepared for war with the United States, but they don't fucking want it. So get wrecked, fucking conservatard. And it's just so funny too. You know, I said the JCPOA. The JCPOA was orchestrated by Obama. Like, Obama was better on the Middle East. Biden was better on the Middle East than Trump would ever fucking be, than any Republicard would ever fucking be. Okay, so I think that's everything here. Yeah. All right, that is everything for our stream. MarcheseMethods.com for one-on-one coaching, where I help you navigate your confusing thoughts, feelings, and behaviors to better get you on a pathway to peace, joy, fulfillment, confidence, get your eyes on the prize, and find your fulfillment. You can also head on over to my DMs or email me at marchesemethods@proton.me to gain access to my Discord server for $5 a month, where you can text me all day, every day for questions, advice, counseling, coaching, essentially. My hoodie is available on MarcheseMethods.com. You can also tip me on X, the tip icon on the right-hand side of the profile. I take Bitcoin or Cash App. And you can also send a super chat. Link in the description for the YouTube video and Rumble. So that is our stream. Thank you so much for tuning in. Next time we will go over the Realpolitik cope. And I will see you next time. I think I'm estimating that to be Saturday. Until then, enjoy your evening.